Coming to you now on Shoptalk TV, a conversation between Tara Patton, the founder and CEO of Huemanize, and Raquan Lucas, VP of Content for Grocery Shop.
Awesome. Well, welcome to another segment of Shop Talk TV. I'm Raquan Lucas, the VP of Content at Shop Talk, and I have the pleasure of chatting with Tara Patton. Tara is the founder and CEO at Huemanize, a consulting firm that helps companies build relationships that go beyond mere transactions. Tara's work brings humanity back to loyalty marketing through customized strategies that speak to customers' unique needs and behaviors. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, I think this is going to be a super great conversation and really looking forward to it. So as your bio kind of suggests, you're kind of a strong expert in loyalty, and I want to make that obviously the crux of our conversation. But if we start broad and talk about like loyalty in that broad way, depending on who you ask, everyone kind of has their own definition of what loyalty is. So I'm curious from the humanized perspective, how you guys are defining loyalty.
Well, honestly, I couldn't have said it better than that bio that you snagged to read about me.
Yeah.
But I'll expand just on it a little bit. So as we think about loyalty at Humanize, we're always focused on relationships. We're focused on relationship building. We know that many companies have a ton of data that they're sitting on, and oftentimes they don't know how to translate that into relationships and also approach people as humans. So we are people-centered first, but data-informed. And that's really the heart and core of my organization, and we really focus on that and helping to build broad-scale loyalty programs.
Yeah, no, that's that makes a lot of sense, and certainly seems like strong pillars to be thinking about in today's world, especially as you think about shoppers today and how increasingly people are becoming a little bit more price conscious and are showing some signs of trade-offs and whatnot. So it feels like right now is a moment where people should be thinking really smartly about loyalty. So if we dig into specific tactics that retailers and brands are using to drive loyalty, it feels like one that always seems to be apparent is personalization. Consumers tend to kind of show research is suggesting preferences for having some sort of level of personalization. So I wanted to hear from you what you think around kind of one-on-one personalization, and if that's like truly the holy grail that a lot of brands should be achieving and striving towards?
So I think about this a little bit differently, and I'll say one-on-one personalization is great, but we have to also be careful to not overuse it and to not spook our customers away, right? You don't want your brand to come across as Big Brother. You don't want your brand to come across, if you get an advertisement or you get an offer from a brand and it's very super niche and specific to you, you're going to wonder, how did they figure that out? How did they get that information to feed that up to you, right? So I don't necessarily think it's the holy grail. And I don't think that every company needs to operate as some of the brands like a Spotify or Netflix to be very personalized based on those types of preferences. Actually, I think if you have some segmentation set up based on like behavioral data and just really smart segmentation that can target a population but not be so super personalized, again, you don't want to scare customers away.
Yeah. It seems like you definitely want to kind of strike that right balance. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely hear you on that front. It seems like another tactic that a lot of retailers and brands are also thinking about is this idea of gamification and how you can incorporate that into your either your loyalty program specifically or just broader way that you are kind of using it on your websites or whatnot. And so I'm curious around how you're seeing gamification play a role in driving engagement and also impacting loyalty.
Mm-hmm. So gamification is an interesting one. You were at the pitch competition where there was a brand that talked about gamification and they actually won the pitch. But when you think about gamification, you really have to ensure that it doesn't come across as a gimmick. So for instance, I was talking to my husband last night and he mentioned that he plays the games on Temu, but he has never made a purchase on Temu. So
Mhm.
he doesn't trust the brand, and that game is not helping translate the value or, communicating to him as a potential customer that this is the place where you need to shop. Now, on the flip side of that, one of the brands that won yesterday, Playably, they're doing some really interesting things where they're actually customizing the games, right? So they're making games that are customized, that are specific, that are bringing in different brand elements that are actually relevant to the people who are playing the games, and it's actually driving conversion. Another example of gamification is a brand called Redeem, Rediem. They do gamification in a way that it helps build community for brands. And so I think when, these brands are not just focused on the game output, they're focused on what type of value can be created throughout playing these games. And also, you don't want to just have people playing games like my husband on Temu. You want to get them to take some action, right,
Right,
with your
right.
company, especially online. So I think that there are some brands that are having some really exciting things coming out in the gamification space. I hope we continue to see that, and I hope we don't, get caught up in that gimmicky space.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with you on that front too. And it was great to hear you talk a little bit about kind of what Playably is doing because it seems like it strikes the balance of not also having that gamification element, but also speaking to what we were talking about just a bit earlier around personalization. They kind of
Yeah.
combine the two, which seems like to be good ways to drive loyalty. So I did want to make sure that we have some time to also talk about like specific metrics. And I was curious on your perspective on what would be kind of that one loyalty metric that people should be paying attention to. Perhaps the answer is probably a little more nuanced than that, but would love to get your perspective on metrics and how you kind of advise your clients on that.
Of course. So I think when people think loyalty, the first thing they think is CLV, right?
Mm,
And that's definitely a solid metric to track. But I think before you even get to CLV, I think folks need to really have a strong understanding of, what is that repeat purchase rate after that initial purchase? So how soon is a customer coming back after they've initially made a purchase with you? So I'll give you an example. If you shop a skincare brand and you know that your brand takes about 30 days to use, if you're using it consistently, and you have shoppers coming back and they're purchasing between 30 and 45 days, okay, right? They're in that range. But if you have shoppers coming back between 60 and 90 days, there may be a loyalty gap. Of course, there's a loyalty gap if they're not coming back at all, right? So you really need to make sure that you're converting those customers that have made that initial purchase to go beyond that initial purchase and at least make the second and at least make the third, right? So I think focusing very early in the journey and tracking those metrics will help you better understand if there are gaps and how to make a stronger loyalty play. And I always tell people, sometimes it's not just about the loyalty program, sometimes it's about the retention strategies, right? And I think those really need to be put in place first. Of course, this is nuanced, so there's not really one metric because loyalty is really about sentiment, it's about value creation at the end of the day.
yeah, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so I noticed you mentioned and called out, how you think being data centered is super important for loyalty. I'm curious around kind of, I know you kind of talked about it a little bit as we were talking about metrics, but curious if there are other different kind of data points that you think retailers and brands should be considering as they kind of structure out their loyalty programs or try to drive repeat purchases and ways to strike loyalty. Yeah.
So I always tell my clients when they come to me, what do you want to drive?
Hmm.
Right? So you can be developing a loyalty program and you want to drive repeat purchases, or you want to increase AOV, or you want to improve profitability, right? So it's really going to be specific to whatever it is your overall goal is that you really want to drive.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense too. So maybe if we're a little bit more like long-term thinking, and hopefully people are adopting some of the practices that you're sharing. Where do you kind of see loyalty going? Maybe even more specifically to loyalty programs. What are those going to look like in the future?
So I think that loyalty programs are going to evolve into an ecosystem. They won't live in a silo anymore. I think that brands are going to have to be really intentional with integrating loyalty at each touch point that they have with the customer because ultimately your customers want to feel seen, they want to be heard, and they want to feel valued, right? And that doesn't just happen by slapping a loyalty program on your website or just setting up a loyalty program with points. So as we think about the next 3 to 5 years, I think brands are going to get really smart, and that's actually how we work with our companies today, is ensuring that they're integrating it throughout the entire, brand ecosystem.
Yeah, no, those are all great points, and I think kind of bodes well for where the future is going in regards to loyalty. So,
Nice.
Tara, it's been a pleasure chatting with you,
Same.
and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
having me.
no
Appreciate
problem.
it.